Possible altcoin reversal is cooking here for us, guys, but do we have to wait a few more days? I'm going to show you some key charts and some key information for you in the stream, as well as give you tons of altcoin setups that you can work with. Let's go. Now we're going to jump into tons of content here for you, but that first chart that you can see on my tile, I'm looking at the total 3 chart, and you can see there is some serious support here for us at the 775 billion region. Why do I like this area as a big altcoin bounce zone, a big altcoin support zone? Is I've got the VWAP from the lows, I've got an order block here, I've got a trend, and I've got a 786 fib. And this is telling me in terms of total 3, this is our altcoin gauge, and this is a major support zone for us. And we can also see here on this oscillator on the downside, we're starting to print bullish divergence on total 3. Now this is all the altcoins in the market, excluding things like ETH and BTC, obviously. And this is telling us that we've got big support that we can work with. So in terms of a possible altcoin reversal brewing, we can see there's potentially a little bit more downside to come before the big move. Now we're going to jump into Bitcoin. We're going to look at yesterday's trades as well, and we're going to cover loads of alts, guys. So let's go. Starting at Banter Bubbles, you can see we got a mixed bag at the moment here. Nice and green on a lot of them. Look at this night. Look at Peppy. Lit is finally getting a little bit of traction here. This is now the TGE of the competitor to hype. So there's a bit of action now on that guy. And funnily enough, ADA at the bottom here, -3. I'm talking about this on a higher time frame chart later on. So let's go into BTC and yesterday's long that I gave you guys. What an absolute banger here. Look at this 86,700. This support region has held for us. This was our bounce zone that we were looking at. So hopefully some of you guys got that. And now we are moving into our first danger region. This area is our 618 into 786. And that zone is 89.6 into 89K. So possible rejections coming here in this local region. And then guys, don't forget the big one is 90,600. That is our big danger zone here to the upside. We've rejected off this one many times already. Look at that. It's our 50-day MA. It's our macro 618 there. So big zone for us. And we also have tons of liquidity tie-in. Look at this liquidation heat map to the upside here at around 91K. Look at that. If they go chasing that area over there, that is a big rejection zone. So in terms of guys looking for shorts, I'd say higher conviction stuff. You want to look for some kind of sweep of this area here. So look into about 91K. That could give you a nice short play on BTC. Let's see how the day obviously continues. And then in terms of lower down supports, you know what it is. It's from yesterday, 86,700 and 85,700 are holding for us for now. Okay, so possible longs from those regions on any reversals. Now let's get into some of the big news, and the big one today is obviously our Fed FOMC minutes that are coming out in a couple of minutes time. So that is potentially a market mover, not normally something we track too much. You know, we don't normally get massive moves out of that, but it's definitely something that could cause a few problems. So anybody holding some tight positions there, just watch your stops. Try and focus on some of your big areas rather than playing in between the big zones, because if you get a bit of volatility, you can get absolutely chopped up. So guys, that is the big news for today. And then obviously we've got some more potential market movers out there. Yesterday we were talking about Venezuelan oil, and today we're talking about Trump threatening Iran with a strike. Okay, and we've got Russia coming into the party, also trying to mediate things or trying to just supply a little bit of commentary at the moment. But these are all market movers for us, and things are obviously on a knife's edge with regards to that, and it's all coming down to oil once again. You can see they are trying to get this oil price to reverse a little bit to the upside, but we can see the big zone is still this 49 region over here. Anything 51 to 49 makes a ton of sense for me, so kind of just waiting patiently. But you can see there's a bit of drama in the markets, and the S&P, well, it's still sitting around about these all-time highs. Not looking for a trade right now on this thing for me. Looking for lower. If it does drop, we've got a possible long at 6,780. Let's wait and see if we do get that drop. Obviously, that is going to hurt the crypto markets, but that could be one of the triggers for a bit of an altcoin run if we do get a drop there on the stock markets. Now, the big news here for me today, and one of the indicators obviously we've looked at the total 3 chart, we can see we've got major support here for these altcoins. It's almost like they've completely been forgotten, but we can see there's a big bullish support zone just around the corner. It looks like 6 to 10% down. But what is the other catalyst for the crypto market? What have we seen in the past that actually plays out for us? And one of the big ones is obviously the gold and silver markets slowing down. Now, I touched on this yesterday briefly in terms of silver reversing and gold reversing, and that should give us some kind of trigger. And Bull Theory has covered this pretty nicely. So if you want to give this a read here, this is Bull Theory IO, and he's explained why he's waiting for the metals to start cooling down, and then we can get some kind of rally in the crypto market. So it's about patience here, it's about waiting. It's a hell of a long thread, guys. I'll leave that up to you to go and read. But essentially what we want to see is we want to see the brakes get put onto things like silver and gold, and when that happens, we should see that rotation into the crypto markets. Now, this could happen, in a week or so, could take a couple more weeks, could take 3 or 4 weeks, but that is essentially what we're looking at. So I'm tracking the silver chart on the monthly here. And just as an example for you guys, we're looking for areas where silver has slowed down. Okay, now this monthly chart, you can see in this example over here, we got the heavily overbought sign, and then it did start rolling over. Then we had this monthly chart in this region. This was September 20, and then it eventually did roll over a little bit. And now we have started printing overbought signs now on the monthly for silver, and we are obviously looking for some kind of cool down here and then maybe consolidation, but that should allow some of these obviously the crypto market to get a little bit more attention. Okay, so when the capital gets pulled out of these metals, maybe they're going to rotate it into some of the other markets. Okay, BTC on the higher time frame, you can see no changes here from yesterday. This chart is obviously sitting in the Chartakers Discord for you guys, and you can see my sentiment remains the same. These are all the big zones to the upside. Any pumps in these areas, we are looking for sells. We are looking for rejections in any of those zones, and the big one for me is the monster bear trap that I think will develop here, 78 to 75k. If we drop into that zone, guys, that's a big banger for me. I think we're going to get a beautiful long out of that. That is obviously going to come with altcoin pain, and that might result in this chart getting reset for us, and that would give us that bullish move we're looking at. So something like that, a nice big drop into that zone, and then bang off that trend maybe gives us the big move that we want to see on some of these altcoins. Now, what I've got coming for you is I've selected a couple of random alts. Injective, we haven't spoken about that one in so long. We're talking about Cardano as well. I've got BONK for you coming in hot. We're looking at AVAX, and then I'm going to update some of the charts from yesterday. We had some of those scalping trades, SUI, AAVE, BCH. Those things are now cooking. Well, they're not cooking, but they have activated. We're sitting in those positions. So we're going to talk about those, and then we're going to jump into the higher time frame stuff. So let's get into ETH, and as a starting point here for us, this was our ETH update from yesterday, and I was looking for a little bit lower on ETH for the bounce. So unfortunately, we didn't get that one, but you can see we've got a clear range here to the downside on ETH. And for me, any moves into this region is still a possible bounce zone, still a possible long, and that is 2888 for me on ETH. Then lower down, guys, we got 2840 is our next degen long zone. So looking for a drop here, that should give us a bounce play on ETH. If we do push a little bit higher today, you can see our local bear zone, our local short zone is anything from 3030 into about 3,100. So anywhere in that type of region is looking like potential rejection zones there for me on ETH. Okay, so waiting patiently there, no major move, and then just tapping or just touching ETH on the higher time frame. You can see like this thing's been sold off super heavily since the highs. When was this? Late August. We were looking at the highs on ETH. And now we are trying to consolidate a little bit at this 2,700, 2,800 region. And just looking at this, asking for some kind of reversal in some of these altcoins isn't exactly, asking too much. In terms of this chart, we could easily push into that 3.5 region and then see some more downside later on. So in terms of getting a possible bounce out of the market and still remaining relatively bearish, you can see on this chart, it's not unreasonable to expect some kind of move to the upside at some point on these alts. The question is, what does it look like? And right now, if we look at a little drop first on that total 3 chart, for example, that I showed you, you will also see things like ETH start dropping a little bit lower, and you're going to see something along these lines, drop back into that 2.7 and then maybe that push up for that later on a sell. Okay, so that is the ETH situation at the moment. Let's talk SOL, and I've actually preset an order on this one on WeX. I'm waiting for this 121.5 into 121 zone. Now, I covered this one yesterday as well, and we just didn't get that drop. So we got the move on SUI, we got BCH, we got AAVE, but this 121.5 on SOL It just hasn't taken yet. So I still think there's a possibility that we get that. And if there is a short-term move up, we're simply printing that lower high and then possible downside here on SOL. And we'll look at that 121.5 as and when it hits. But right now, that is looking like the most realistic long zone for me. And then obviously possible shorts here, 128.3 into about 130. This could be a really nice short zone. And you possibly get some tie in with BTC as well in and around this 91K zone if we do push a little bit higher. So just try and tie them in together, any pushes to the upside there, guys. So shorts 128 into 130, and then longs 121.5. That is still looking best for me. And then you've got your backup zone here, 119 on SOL, looking interesting there. Okay, so mixed signals on the oscillators here, just trying to wait very patiently here, but I've loaded an order on WEX, and you can see it's sitting here at 121. Okay, so I've got an order waiting here on WEX, and it's 82 SOL. And let's see if we do get a meltdown when I'm not paying attention. Hopefully it will pick that up round about that buy zone that I've given you, and then we'll get some kind of bounce out of SOL. Okay, so waiting patiently on that one. Then a quick update on Sui's trade yesterday. We got our bounce. We can't really say it was much of a bounce so far, so you'll be forgiven for jumping out at this moment, because it's not looking, it's not looking very exciting, and it can go either way. But I'm kind of sitting in this one on 2-bit still. You can see both of my buy orders picked up on 2-bit there yesterday, the ones we preset while we waited for it to drop. And now it has turned green. So kind of just waiting patiently. Let's see what happens with Sui. Current support 142 is the big one for me on the lower time frame. Okay, that is obviously the degen basis here. Let's see if that thing pushes higher. And then if we do climb higher, again, don't get married to this thing. I can't see it pushing much higher than this 1.5. And I rate this as a decent short zone for you guys if we push into that area. So 1.5 on Sui looks like a decent reversal over there. And look, people will be getting nice and euphoric, and that could be your opportunity to short that one. Okay, 1.5 on Sui. Then an update on yesterday's BCH. We pinged both the entries. That 591 zone is hit, but it didn't actually pick up my second order that I had on Blowfin. So that one is underway at the moment. Let's see if that is going to hold. I did give you my sentiments yesterday on BCH and this whole new narrative that could be coming out, that it's quantum proof or whatever the story is. Let's just be ready, whether you believe the narrative or not, or care or whatever. Let's just be ready. If these guys are going to pump BCH, we're going to be ready to go. Okay, so I'm going to track this one as often as possible for you guys, and it might take a couple of goes before we get a major high time frame breakout. But right now, I'm going to keep this on my watch list. I'm going to keep looking for moves on BCH, and at some point it might turn into something a little bit more substantial. Okay, so BCH is underway. No changes here. Main support that you can use, 589 down into 585 makes sense to me. And then AAVE from yesterday, literally no changes. It's kind of just floating around. I did explain there was a little bit of FUD around this. There was a big whale exiting as well at some point. And, from what I understand, it's still a decent project. So cannot see a reason to not look for some longs here after a big sell-off like that. And we do have major support, 147 here for AAVE. So use that obviously as your main support, 147, 146. And short-term degen traders, you can probably use 149. So here's the two positions on Blowfin from yesterday. You can see BCH didn't pick up that 591, and AAVE is still flat. Okay, so no changes here, just kind of letting this thing play out for us as we go. Now, let's one more for you guys. ZEC. Okay, remember yesterday I spoke about two opportunities for Zcash. There was the easy short at this current resistance zone, and then there's the slightly more higher grade or harder short, which is the bearish divergence short. So if you want to have a crack at Zcash, I have had a go on a short here on Zcash. It's not major size, but I am looking for this thing to potentially roll over. And if you want to have a go at the easy short zone, which is, the market makers being kind to us and not flushing anybody out, you're looking for a potential exit plan above 560, and that short for me would just take you down into this rising trend at best, possibly this horizontal at about 450. So that is short zone number one that you can watch there on Zcash. That makes sense to me there. Nice horizontal, nice 50-day MA in that region, and you can see we are getting reversal prints at the moment on the 12-hour. Okay, so possible reversal there. The danger is the bearish divergence short, and what does that mean? That means we print a lower high on that oscillator, and at the same time we're printing a lower high on the oscillator, we start pushing up into the next big zone, and they try and squeeze guys out. Okay, so backup short zone 595 into 600 on Zcash, and that should print bearish divergence on the 12-hour, which could be slightly more powerful in terms of a short. So if you are looking to short this one, just manage your risk, manage your sizing. Okay, look out. If this thing squeezes, it easily goes to 595. So be super careful if you want to get married to these trades. Safest exit for me is close above this 560 at this current time. Okay, now let's look at a couple of higher time frame charts. I have selected a few random ones now. There's obviously going to be loads more in the Chart Hackers Discord. And remember, all the charts you see on the show here go into the Chart Hackers Discord directly afterwards as well. So let's just jump into some of the randoms that I've selected. ADA, I know there's a couple of Cardano fans out there, and I just want to point out the 3-day charts. We have been faced with situations like this before, and I remember the Japanese carry trade was a major turning point for us. I think that was August 24, and we were getting tons of double bullish divergence prints on the 3-day. We were getting loads of these looks on these altcoins, and for me, we're getting a similar feel to this Cardano at the moment. So I just want to show you on the 3-day chart here. You can see we've got our bullish divergence printing here, potentially failing one more time, but it is looking good. And then we've got a major level that we are watching on Cardano here at around about 318 into about 3.1, anywhere in that region. You can see it's a hell of a strong zone. So what does this mean for us? It means margin, low margin, and spot traders. These are your types of trades. These are the big swing moves that you're going to be looking for. And in terms of a possible entry on this guy, it's going to take one more sell-off in the market. It's going to result in total 3 dropping into that support that I gave you at the start of the stream. And that's potentially anything from 8 to about 15% more downside on this Cardano, and that could be a local bottom for us, and that in fact could actually be a local bottom for the market in general if we start seeing Cardano start moving here in a region like that. So look out for that. That is a huge zone for me. I would say it's a hell of a struggle if it starts losing that area. I would say we at least get a fight out of this thing, and again, we can remain bearish overall on the market. You don't have to turn into a market bull at any point. You can see we've got a major undercarriage here, so if we do get a bit of a pump here, remember the guys are going to get so euphoric, and that's going to actually be a really nice short for us later on as well on Cardano. So right now, let's see if we can lock in an entry over the next few days. This could become a January pump, but we might get that sell off first. So look out, anything at I'd say start at about 33 into about 31 makes a lot of sense for me. 33 into 31 for Cardano. That is a nice big play there for you guys. Let's just see the size of the possible move there. Ooh, 60%. Okay, a little bit aggressive here. I'd be happy with like 10 or 20%. Okay, but if they're going to give us a little bit more, that's great. Okay, let's look at AVAX. Also, very similar situation. Here's AVAX on the 3-day, and look at that. We've got multiple bullish divergence prints, and you can see this big level, funnily enough, a 786 from the October 10th dump is holding here. We've seen it on Ondo as well. We've seen on many other tokens. These 786s are actually coming into play. So right now for me, AVAX, big support down to 11.3 at the moment, making a lot of sense. Look at that. And that's another 10% drop if they go down and retest that zone. And remember, if that happens, you're going to see this total 3 chart moving into this major support zone. And what you want to do is you want to keep your eyes on this thing, because when we drop into that support, that could be your trigger for a lot of these alts that we are going to get some kind of relief rally or bounce. You can see it's a very strong zone here for us on this total 3. Okay, let's go into Injective, another one I haven't covered enough lately, and you can actually see why. I mean, this thing looks like absolute dog shit at the moment. Look at the sell-off here after being the golden child of the market. Look at this, from November 23, this thing pumped all the way into to 52 in February 24, and then it's been on a constant downtrend since then. But you can see there's 2 major levels of interest here for Injective, and you know, if the market does start cooking again, the guys will come back and these things will start moving. And it's difficult to pick the major movers, but we know some of the older school tokens like Injective will get interest again. We know Cardano will get interest again. Even shitcoins like ETH Classic and those types of things will start waking up. So right now for me, Injective, there's a big level here at 4.24, making a ton of sense for me. So a little drop on this guy, and not so little, again, another about 10%. Give or take on Injective, this could be a trigger. So first level for me, 4.24 down to even 4.1 on Injective could be a nice play for you guys. And remember, that is the tie-in we want to see on that total 3. Now, obviously, if the market capitulates, there's another major sell. You've got a huge level here on Injective, 2.7, around about 3. even down to 2.4. This whole box over here is a big zone. Okay, it's a big bounce zone, but again, we don't have to worry about that yet. Let's just see what happens at around about this 4.3 region on injective and a possible bounce. Now, another one that's also been super quiet is BONK, and I've whipped out the 786 as well from the October 10th dump. And you can see there it is, waiting very patiently, 675 for BONK. You can see on the 3-day, we are getting multiple divergence prints as well. The only thing I'm not loving is obviously this cash flow that has basically fallen off a cliff here. And we want to see this thing start stabilizing and then rolling to the upside. So that gives us a little bit of breathing room for one more potential sell-off on BONK. And that takes us about 14%, which I think is pretty reasonable for a meme coin. You know, if you got other tokens dropping, say 8 to 10%, and you got a meme coin dropping, say 12 to 14%, that could make a lot of sense. So 675 for BONK, waiting patiently on that one. Let's see if that is going to play out for us. And then one more for you guys, an update on Hype yesterday, and this thing is sitting patiently. The competitor launched, Lighter has launched their token. You can see there's been a bit of a sell-off on Lighter, and now we want to see if the guys are going to come back and buy. We know they got spot markets as well on Lighter, and we're going to track that on the show, let things settle a little bit. But in terms of Hype, which is obviously Lighter's competition, or Lighter is Hype's competition, you can see this thing is teeing up possible inverse head and shoulders here, and I've been tracking this one for a possible push up into this 27, 28 region, and then a possible short. Now, in terms of support for Hype that you can play with, just adjust these fibs here quickly. In terms of good support here that makes sense to me on Hype, 25. This looks like an absolute banger here. Look at that VWAP, look at that 382, look at those horizontals. So if they do bleed you a little bit lower down on Hype, guys, I think you're getting along at this 25 region, 24.9, 25. Could be a little bit along on the short-term time frame here on Hype. Okay, so look at this very mixed signals on that oscillator, and loads of indecision here at the moment, and you can see it's coming out in this chop that you see here on Hype. Okay, so guys, that in a nutshell is what we're looking at the moment. I'm not trading heavily. I'm kind of just waiting patiently for these moves. A couple of scalps here and there, like you can see, BCH, SUI, and a few of these others. So let's see how that goes. I'll jump in again tomorrow, give you a little update, and then we got the new year coming. And what we have seen in the past is, we know the market loves to dump in the first few days of every month. I'm not sure if it's going to be the same for January. There's different theories that we might get an early January pump before a sell-off. So again, we monitor it daily. Guys in the Chart Hackers Discord, you'll be updated regularly on this stuff. Okay, good luck out there. See you later.